First time posting here in this sub, but I'm an avid reader. Also, English isn't my native language. A little backstory. Here in my country, the Philippines, we have a national holiday during August where we celebrate our national language, Buwang Wika, Language Month. Schools have activities, mostly plays and other contests held to celebrate the holiday. This happened back when I was in my third year in high school, 2013. August finally came and the teachers announced a major contest, a play, as part of the celebration for the holiday. My class was busy with the major contest held for the month. Our classes were shortened in order for us to make props and practice. Now, classes start in June back then, so I still didn't know half of my classmates, nor was I close enough to my seatmates until August. As much as I was not close with my classmates, I figured with this contest I could get to know my classmates better and finally get to know all of their names. On with the story. Right after we talked about the contest, what we were going to do and how many materials we were going to buy for props, I was assigned as the head of the props, and my advisor allowed me to pick the classmates to be in the prop committee. Of course I chose the known artsy and crafty students, but I also picked those quiet classmates, and I guess that's when it happened. We had this one classmate, let's call him Junior, that was seated at the last row. We were seated alphabetically, and he was quiet and somewhat odd, like those high school outcasts you would normally see. But he talked to his seatmates sometimes. So I picked him to be on the props committee, since he wasn't chosen to be cast nor an extra. He was sort of awkward to me at first, but I didn't mind it since we never really talked. I was seated in the first row. The first few days were really awkward, but I really wanted to finish the props as soon as possible because we also had to decorate the bulletin board inside our room. It was a minor contest. So I stayed up late at school with my other classmates, and Junior was quietly cutting papers in his seat. I was feeling rather energetic one day because the props for the play are nearly done, so I decided to decorate the bulletin board. There were just a few of us inside the classroom, and Junior was the only guy left. Being 5'4" was hard, so I asked Junior to help me with the top parts of the bulletin board. He refused at first. Why? I didn't know, but I didn't wonder why. But I was so energetic that I was begging him to help me. At this time, we were already in speaking terms, albeit still awkward. Eventually he agrees, and I was jumping happily. In the process of Junior helping me with the props, he was slowly becoming more talkative and smiley. He even finally got to speak with our other classmates, and just like that, we got close. I would walk past him during class. And bug him. He'd do the same to me. I even got to the point of leaning my head on his shoulders. I'm really sweet and clingy, so I do this to all of my friends. A few days later, I see a paper bag inside my bag after eating lunch. I had left my bag unzipped, a bad habit of mine until now, and it was as if it was dropped inside. I took it and opened it, and I see a Hershey's chocolate bar and a small note typed on the bar. It was the typical "I like you" note that you give to your crush, and I was curious who gave it and who sent it. This happened almost every day after that. It was always a Hershey's chocolate bar, but the note slowly became longer and longer with the addition of "you look so pretty today" and "I like your smile." It sounds creepy when I translate them to English, but that's pretty much what the note said. I kept this from my classmates except for one. We'll call him Lex, and I show him all of the notes that I've received. He was keen on finding out who the sender was, and because of the "you look pretty today" phrase, he figured it was one of our classmates because the person who sent it might have seen me during the morning, and I only exit the classroom during lunch, and the messages were dropped in my bag during lunch. You think I knew who it was? No. I never really cared about the letters. Instead, I just pretended that the chocolate was mine and shared it with my seatmates. Call it oblivious or naive, but I never gave a heck about the notes and just gave them to Lex once I had finished reading them. One day we had no teacher for a whole hour, so I was writing on my journal and listening to music when I saw a flash of light from the corner of my eye. I instinctively looked at the direction where it came from, but I saw my classmates doing their stuff, so I just shrugged it off. I was on my commute home, and I left school a bit late. While on my walk to the bus stop, I felt someone was watching me, and I looked over my shoulder to see Junior leaning by a streetlight and fiddling with his phone. Seeing that it was just a classmate of mine, I continued to walk, but the feeling of somebody watching me was still there until I arrived to the bus stop. A few days later, Lex messaged me on Facebook, telling me to stay away from Junior and to avoid him completely. I asked him why, but he told me it's better if I know in person. So the next day arrives, and Lex was the earliest to arrive in the classroom. Next was me, and his body language was off. He was biting his nails, and he looked aggravated, and I was nervous. Lex again told me to avoid Junior, and I asked again why. And he opened the gallery of his phone, and I saw a picture of a phone album with my name as the album title. He swipes the screen, and I see dozens of pictures of me during class. It would have been fine if there were other people in the photos, but these were stolen pictures. Most of it were really zoomed into my face, so it was quite grainy and blurry. Some were cropped so that I was the only one in there, and you could only see my face in the picture. I was scared shitless and asked Lex whose phone was that, and he told me it was Junior's. My blood ran cold and I was shaking. Lex reassured me that he would stop Junior from what he was doing because it was creepy and wrong. I asked myself, why was he doing this? And I remember the time I saw him by the tree while walking to the stop and holding his phone. Was he taking pictures of me that day? I can see in his eyes how concerned he was, and I thank him for warning me. I ask if that's the reason why he wanted me to avoid Junior, but it wasn't. Turns out, it was Junior who was giving me those chocolates and the letters. Lex then told me that Junior had told him he loves me and that I love him. The hairs on my neck stood up, and when he said that, a slew of questions ran over my mind. I was asking myself, was I too friendly? Was I too sweet? Was I leading him on? The last question was obviously a no, because he never really confessed, nor was I interested in a relationship. I started avoiding JR on the same day. My eyes were opened, and I realized a few things he did that felt okay with me when it wasn't supposed to be. Those stares he gave me when I was talking to him were too intense. Him holding my hand tightly, smelling my hair whenever I leaned my head on his shoulder. I was so creeped out. Junior finally noticed me avoiding him, and that was when I felt someone watching me even during class. I would glance over my shoulder and I would see him looking at me with a glint of sadness and anger in his eyes. I told Lex about it and he got annoyed. One time I left school around 7 p.m. because of a school project. Again, I felt somebody was watching me, so I stopped walking and looked around. There he was. Junior was hiding rather poorly behind a bush. I knew it was him because of the outline of his bag sticking out of the bush. Despite feeling scared, I acted like I didn't see anything and pretended to call my mum, but I was actually calling Lex. I told him that Junior was following me to the bus stop and I was scared, and I was thinking he would follow me home. I was half running, half walking now, and I could sense Junior following me. I sneak a glance behind me and I can see Junior catching up on me. I almost tripped, but I managed to run up to the bus stop, but I didn't stop there. I went to the bus stop on the next 2 blocks. Luckily, there was a bus right there and I quickly boarded the bus. I told Lex I was in the bus and that Junior wasn't able to catch me. The next day, I made sure to avoid Junior at all costs. Lex stayed with me the whole day, and when lunch came, we were the first ones to go to the cafeteria. When we got back inside our classroom, I saw an envelope inside my bag and knew then that it was from Junior. I was too scared to open it, so Lex was the one who read the letter. The letter was written on a yellow pad paper, 2 pages back to back, and the penmanship was hardly even readable. After reading the letter, Lex ripped the pages up and threw them in the trash bin. I asked him what Junior wrote in the letter, but he just shook his head. I prodded him to tell me, and eventually he gave in. He told me Junior was furious that I was avoiding him. He was angry that I was avoiding him, my boyfriend, and that I was unfaithful because the whole second page of the letter was all "I love you" written over and over and over again. And then finally, "Thank you for the memories you shared with me." That was when I lost it. I told Lex that I would write him a letter. I wasn't really the confronting type, so I jotted down all my anger in the letter, telling Junior that I was not his girlfriend and I didn't love him. I also said how creepy and how out of line he was, and how it creeped me out when I noticed him following me to the bus stop. Lex was the one who gave the letter to Junior, and after that, he never really talked to me again. But he would still look at me in class with the same angry and sad expression in his eyes. Back in the late 90s to early 2000s, I was a call center agent working in an early morning shift. BPO, or call center companies, working hours depend on the country that they're centering their services for. Here in the Philippines, if you are working on a BPO, chances are your working hours are either in the evening or very early morning. My shift back then was from 4 a.m. to 1 p.m. Usually I would wake up at around 3ish to prepare, then my husband would take me to work. Where I am living, the schedule of transportation is only until late evening, so that's why my husband takes me to work every day. One early morning while traveling to work, the motorcycle we were riding ran out of gas. Since it was my first 2 weeks of work, and having tardiness on your time card is a very big no, my husband suggested that we can take the jeepney to go to work since we have traveled half of the route and I won't be late for work. Jeepneys are a very common mode of transport here in the Philippines, plus it is cheaper than taking a cab. For those who don't know, jeepneys are like vans with open windows on each side, while the seats are those on the train where the passengers are facing each other. You can search for jeepneys in Google, so that may give you a better idea as to what they look like. So my husband waited for me before he pushes the motorbike to the gas station, and luckily an empty one arrives. Somehow I felt safe since there were no passengers, so I sat near the exit in case something happened. A couple minutes after, the driver stopped since someone was waving and wanted to ride the jeepney. Then and there, once the man got inside, I smelled the stench of alcohol. He was wearing black pants, a marine-like boots, jacket, and was carrying a big backpack. He sat near the driver, so I didn't mind then. This is where the creepy part begins. I was looking outside, observing my surroundings, when I had a feeling that someone was looking at me. That's when I noticed that the man was staring at me wide-eyed and with a full ear-to-ear smile. Not just an ordinary smile, though. It's like an evil, sadistic smile that will really give you a very uncomfortable feeling. Panic started boiling inside me. I decided not to pay attention to what he was doing and looked away. While looking outside, I can see in my peripheral vision that he's moving slowly towards me until he reaches the seat beside me. I was full-blown nervous at this time, and I can feel sweat on my palms. At first he didn't do anything, he just sat beside me while still looking at me. To my surprise, suddenly he was touching the strands of my hair and looked like he was smelling it. He told me how fragrant my hair was and how soft it is, but I pretended that I was not hearing anything. He then stood on my foot. He acted like it was an accident, and he started apologizing, trying to touch my shoes and wiping it. The 15-minute ride felt like an eternity. I can't describe the horror and dread that I was feeling at the very moment. I was shaking, thinking whether to call my husband or shout at the driver for help to even get off the jeepney, but the roads were so dark and isolated, I was afraid for my safety. I tried to stay calm as possible, and as I saw the entrance of our office, I immediately shouted to the driver to stop at the corner. I got off the jeepney, and as fast as I could, thinking the man would follow me. I looked back to check if the man had gotten out, but he hadn't. He was looking back at me, still giving me that evil smile. He then mouthed, "I'll see you again." I quickly ran to the guard at the entrance and he asked if I was alright because it looked like I'd seen a ghost or something. I told the guard what happened and he alerted the other guards who were stationed at the time to check if the man followed me or got out of the jeepney. Thankfully, I never saw him again, but it still is an uncomfortable encounter that still haunts me to this day. There is this mall here in the Philippines called Isitan. One day I took my girlfriend to see a movie there because we wanted to see if it was that bad of a mall, since our friends always talk about it being crap and all. Now entering the mall, I noticed a lot of people looking at us rather weirdly. My girlfriend noticed it too. It kind of felt like how weird town folks in horror movies always stare at the newcomers. We saw a movie that night and the cinema was messed up. Seats were falling apart, cranky ticket salesperson and all of that. There were little holes in the armrests with cockroaches just crawling in and out of them, and there were a few elderly people just sleeping and taking up about 3 seats worth to lie down and sleep. All pretty normal for a cheap cinema, I guess, but the weird part was the people. Throughout the whole movie, there were these individuals who would just keep switching seats, going outside, then coming back, over and over. It was almost as if there was a routine because it would happen too often with the same men switching seats with each other in the cinema. My girlfriend noticed the same thing and wanted to leave, but I insisted that we finish the movie and observe the people around us. Fast forward 2 hours later, after the worst horror movie I've ever seen was over, we exited the cinema. Nothing bad happened to us, but it sure was rather creepy of an experience, to say the least. I think this story should be here in this Reddit page, but if you need to remove it, please tell me where to post it when you do. Sorry in advance if I have any typos or wrong grammar because English is not my first language. I am a long-time lurker here, first-time poster. I'm 30 and female. I'm a small girl, only 4 foot 9 inches. I'm always mistaken for a 20-year-old, and I also live in the Philippines. This is all very important for the story. This happened 2 years ago. I was 28 at this time. And I still have goosebumps when I remember it. Here in the Philippines, we have many computer shops, and sometimes the shop is open 24 hours. So when I finish work at 4 p.m, me and my friend Mel will go to the shop and play some Dota 2 for hours. At this time, it's a Saturday. I work from Tuesday to Saturday, so there was no work tomorrow. So we decided to play until the morning. When it's time to come home, it's already 2 a.m. There are no jeepneys, public transport, that is often very cheap, that I can ride, so I decided to get a taxi. My friend Mel gets the taxi for me, and when it stops in front of him, he calls me out of the shop. I know there is 2 types of cars, but the car here that is driven by the taxi driver has the seat on the left side and the passenger is on the right side. Mel opens the passenger door at the back and we say our goodbyes. But while the car door was open, he reminded me of something. Then the driver is kind of annoyed, asks if we're going to be moving or not. So I told Mel just to text me the details, and I closed the door. When I get in the taxi, I told the driver where I live and give him the directions. The light in the taxi was off, so I didn't get a proper look at his face, but he felt like the serious type. The drive home will be about 15 to 20 minutes, so I tried to take a nap, but I kept smelling something weird. I ignored it, maybe the driver had bad BO or something. So I got my mint balm out and tried to sniff it. It relaxed me a bit, and I'm not smelling any of his BO, so I'm good. But I still don't feel comfortable, so I tried to squeeze myself on the right side of my head to the glass of the door. I'm getting a headache and getting kinda dizzy, and I blamed it on working the whole day and then playing games until the morning. I also can't get my phone out because we have many cases where the driver will rob the passengers, and I'm getting so paranoid and uncomfortable. So I decided that I would just look outside the window. While I was looking at the time on the dashboard, I also noticed there was a towel lying flat, almost blocking the AC. And I remember it was December, so I really didn't mind because it's cold. While I was doing that, the driver kept looking at me. I'm aware of it, but I keep ignoring it, because usually drivers are super talkative and this one is silent, and I like that. So I let it slide, even if I'm getting really annoyed. Also, I'm dizzy, like I was drunk and my head really hurts, so I try to sniff the mint balm again. So when we entered the gate to my condominium, I told the guards my floor and no need to get the ID of the driver. I notice that the driver is keeping his head low. I'm like, okay, that is weird, but I don't mind because maybe he's tired. When we get to the front of the building where I live, I made him stop and pay for my ride. It was a 90 peso fare, and unfortunately taxi drivers here will always say, "Sorry ma'am, we don't have coins," even if they do. So in my head, I just said, "Fine," and gave him the 100 pesos, because I have no coins. So I told him, "Here is 100 pesos, po." Then I went out and closed the door on the right side. He then opened the door on the right passenger side. When I looked back, the light of the taxi was open and the door was open, and I was still chill thinking he wanted to give me the 10 pesos change. And I still remember our talk, so here it is. Just a little bit of context. Kuya is the word used for any male who is like a big brother. That can be a stranger or an actual brother. It's a way to show respect in the Philippines. And in the Philippines, it's very common to show respect by using titles such as Kuya and Ate to older people. One little extra bit of guidance. At this point, one of the guards has walked over just to be sure that I'm safe. Anyway, this is how the conversation goes. The driver shouting, "Ma'am, ma'am." Me, "Kuya, you can have the 10 pesos, it's okay, po." Driver, "No ma'am, where is the guy?" Me, "What, Kuya? What guy? My friend Mel didn't ride with me." The driver, "No ma'am, he was with us the whole time. Where is he?" Me, "Kuya, I was alone," panicking at this point. Driver, "He was a really big guy, seated on my back like a bouncer." The guard comes over. "Sir?" Tapping the glass window on the driver's side. "What's going on?" Driver, "Nothing." "What is happening?" Me, "I don't know what you're talking about, Kuya." Guard, "Ma'am, are you okay?" Me, "I'm okay, po." Driver, "Close the passenger side door. I'm getting out of here." Guard calls the gate. "It's okay, ma'am. We'll handle it." Me, "It's okay. I'm okay. And have a good night." Guard, "Thank you, ma'am." As I entered the lobby, all of the hair on my body stood up, and I could feel my knees get weak. I was in the elevator, and all the red flags finally came to my head. I then remember the news that I heard the other day. There has been an increase in abductions lately. The MO is always the same. They put a towel, which is coaxed in something that makes the girls sleepy and dizzy, and once the girls have fallen asleep or passed out, they're taken away to be molested, or they're sold to gangs who will then molest them. I also remember that the guy who was driving the taxi that I was in was sitting with very red eyes. It was as though he was high on some sort of drug. I put that down to this possibly being the first time he's done this, and he needed it to be able to get through his plan. But thankfully, I would add, because of him being on drugs, or appearing to be, he thought that the bouncer had gotten in the cab with me, and ironically, his hallucination is what saved me. I don't know what to think at this point, besides what I put together, and my mind is in panic mode. When I got to my bed, I called my friend Mel, and he wished that he took me home. I never reported it because I was stupid not to look at the plate number and told the guards not to deal with it. After a few months, I was watching the news, and it was about the kidnapping that stopped, and they got the criminals. I was hoping that they'd show who the criminals were, but there were so many names that it was just a list of names. Again, I went into panic mode, and I remembered I never told my parents or family about it, but after that news, I told them. Thinking back on it, I think I survived because of the mint balm and the imaginary bouncer friend. The question that still lingers in my mind is if the big guy is just an imagination of the driver, or was he something else? I'll never know, but I have to thank God that I'm still alive. Kia ora whanau, Grimm here. Thank you for making it to the end of another one of my videos. If you liked today's video, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. I always like to read what people say, even if they don't like me. As always, I'm going to give you a word. Today, we're going to use the word desk. D-E-S-K. Put that in the comments. You can use it in a sentence, or you can just write it down as a word. Doesn't really matter. Thank you to all of those who wished me happy birthday. I appreciated it. And hopefully, next year, when my birthday comes along, I'll have more than enough followers and views to be able to do a giveaway or something like that. But anyway, dreams are free, right? Be safe wherever you are. Have an amazing night or day. And as always, I'm Grimm, and I'm, well, signing off.